Thank you, Karina. You can start.
Okay, thanks, Alicia. Thanks for everything. Your support is invaluable. And welcome everybody to this special session in TEEM conference. This is the 4th edition of GAMILEARN, Gamification and Games for Learning. And we are very glad, happy for take your presence in this session. And we have a very great keynote today. I'm just going to introduce our first keynote, that is Sylverster Arnab. Sylverster is a full professor in game science, applied games at Coventry University in the Disruptive Media Learning Lab. And he is also associate of the Center of Post-Digital Cultures. He has a lot of research and research projects about games and gamification, more than 100 publications in this area. And he is a public speaker, keynote at various events in UK, Europe, and internationally. And he is also a training facilitator of Lego Series Plays methodology. And 2 of his projects have won the Gamification Award last year for software and education and learning. Without any more introduction, I think that it's time to listen to our keynote speaker. Please, Sylvester, when you want, you can share with us your presentation.
Okay, the screen should be shared now. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. It's a pleasure for me to talk about the work that we are doing within this particular context in terms of games and playful learning, gamification, so on and so forth. So just to set the scene on where we are in terms of the work that I'm doing at university. I'm based at the Disruptive Media Learning Lab. So the lab has been set up to work with colleagues and students across the university to discover different ways for teaching and learning, and trying to encourage and challenge them to do something different, to encourage us to learn and develop new competencies, and so forth. And one of the key strand of work we are doing is very much around playful and gameful learning. And the work that we are doing has gone beyond the remit of the lab through the university as well as beyond. So we are working with different partners across Europe, internationally, and in Asia as well. And it's interesting that the work that we are doing, we have to think about working with stakeholders and partners, as well as the different user groups who are on the different spectrum in terms of when we think about those who are familiar with new technologies, new methodologies, new pedagogies, and those who are not really comfortable in changing the way they practice their teaching and learning. So it is very important to try and understand the motivation behind how they practice their teaching and learning, to help us understand how can we empathically and how can we make it inclusive in terms of their engagement with new ways for teaching and learning. And we have explored different methodologies and practices in terms of the use of games in learning in different sectors. And you can see here the different projects that we have worked on, which are funded by the various funders. And essentially what we are trying to research and investigate and develop as well as practice is, how do we design an empowering experience? Because every single thing that we do, regardless of the area that we are, whether we are in learning, we are in teaching, whether we are in games, or whether we are in educational technology, is all about creating the experiences which will be empowering, experiences that is going to be meaningful for your target audience. So it is very important to think about that. So the way that we are looking at the context is very much around, how do we remix play? How do we learn from the inspirations that we can get from play and gameplay? we are used to playing games, board games, card games, physical games. We're talking about digital games, so on and so forth. What are the emotional connections that we have had with those particular practices? How can we replicate the emotional connection that we have that will allow us to not only enjoy the experience, but to also be challenged by it and to allow us to really better ourselves in the experience? So this is something that we are interested in. And it is important to try and think of how we can encourage and scaffold and track change that we want to happen, whether it is learning outcomes, whether it's to change behavior, or whether it is to achieve, all sorts of different serious purposes that we want to achieve through gameplay. But one thing that we need to remember, even though we are talking about play a lot in terms of, the inspiration from plays, on and so forth, games in itself is just an instance of play, is a particular manifestation of play that will allow us to explore, experiment, learning from failures, on and so forth. But games is a very good instrument that we can use to measure and to track change and to help us understand what actually happened when someone interacts with something that is playful. So this is the reason why games for learning is an interesting area to get into, to help us understand the process of play and the impact that we can get from it. So this is what we call the magic circle, because the rules for play can change according to the needs. And in terms of the the specific program that I'm going to talk about today is very much trying to understand how can we create gameful and playful experiences in an empathic way, meaning that it is inclusive, equitable, something that is going to encourage anyone from any background to be able to understand the value of games, as well as the co-creation of great games. Co-creation is one of the key things that we are interested in. And as Karina has mentioned before, we won an award for gamification in education and learning. And it is all about trying to understand the process of the creation of games. How do we make it simple and easy for anyone from any background to create them and use them in the classroom, and so on and so forth. So the approach for game changers has been adapted in so many different settings. And one of the examples is the impact that we have achieved in Malaysia, where it is funded by the UK government and the Malaysian government, where we are asked to basically work with the communities in very remote parts of Borneo. You have to fly 2 planes, 3 planes, and then a boat to get to the area. Working with teachers really changed the way we look at game design. So empathic game design has been implemented in these different schools, where teachers are empowered to create their own games and use it in the classroom, whether it would be tabletop games or digital games. And it's all about the creation and co-creation process that they've gone through, which has received a lot of press interest in Malaysia, which has helped us to engage with so many other marginalized communities. And there are now game designers, quote unquote, in terms of their own practice. So it's quite interesting to see how that actually manifests in all sorts of different ways. And most importantly, it's all about the impact that we want to achieve. We don't just want to create games for learning for the sake of it, just because we're interested in games, but it's all about the impact that we want to achieve, whether it will be for the individual learners, the individual teachers, or whether it is going to impact the community where the teachers and the learners are, and how can it impact the institution and the environment where they are. How can games help someone to learn about the ecology? How games can help people to learn about climate change? How can they use games and playful inspiration to create experiences for the community, for them to understand the importance of all sorts of different issues and challenges that we are, concerned with. So in terms of upskilling teachers, it's one of the key important instruments that is most effective and it is a direct means for achieving all of the SDG 4 targets. SDG 4 targets for the United Nations is on equitable, inclusive, and quality education. So this is something that we strongly believe in terms of upskilling teachers who are at the front line. So lecturers, educators who are at the front line, on the ground, working with the learners. These are the people that we really need to work with to ensure that they understand the value as well as the process of creation. And core creativity is one of the things that we push in terms of game making, creating game-based learning resources. When we come together to create something meaningful, we own the process. So the teachers own the process of the co-creation, they own the instrument, so they can implement it and invest their time in it. If we create games, give it to the teachers for them to use, they will not understand the context because it might be relevant. They might feel like we are actually preaching to them, saying these are the things that you need to use to teach. But if we include them in the co-creation process, it would make it more empathic and more inclusive. But yeah, people ask me, so how can we go about doing this? How do we do it, right? There is no fixed formula, right? Play and games for serious purposes, there is no such thing as a formula. There are so many frameworks and models. I even have my own framework for creating games, but it's all about the personal connection that you have with the process that can help you to understand the evidence that you can read from literature, the example from the case studies. We need to dig deeper into what makes games so effective, and we can only do that by working with educators, by those people who are on the ground, who have practicing teaching and learning for a long time. So we have to work with them. And of course, as I said before, we have our own framework in terms of the research that we have done in a pragmatic and transdisciplinary approach in creating games, from pre-production to the production of the game, through to the testing and evaluation in post-production, which is important for us to understand the value of the different experts in the different areas who can actually be involved in the process, which is interesting for us. But simplify, people say simplify, it's still so complicated, right? So the work that we are doing is very much around trying to onboard people in the process. How can they actually practice it, right? And then how can they consolidate the knowledge that they have? So we use a lot of processes, for example, design thinking, in getting people to help them to think about the creation of different resources, which is important. The leveling up approach is important. We need to onboard them, most importantly. And how do we onboard them? It's simple. A great idea can stem from something that is already there, right? So we don't have to start from scratch. So we often use something that which we call remixing play flash games, which we will release as an online version soon, as well in a card game version, where we would give a game card as an inspiration and a topic card, and get people to quickly think of a game that they can create. Some people manage to create games in less than a minute, less than 50 seconds as well, in the different workshops, different training that we have done, just to show that people can think creatively and quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you are in the process of practicing the creative process, you will be able to expand it further. And from this experience, they can expand the idea that they have by looking at this particular process, where they will be able to expand further on the game idea and create something, test it, and going through the iterative process over and over again until they are happy with the game that they create, test it with the learners, test with the students, and they can inform further design that they can have on that particular idea. And it has been working in so many different ways. For example, teacher remix games has been done in Malaysia, and they've used it in different classrooms. They created their own boards. They even look at the top right hand, where hopscotch game has been remixed into a science game, which is being used in schools. We got card games for empathy, based on, story dice and card games. Something that is more digital, for example, the pervasive games which have been created through an authoring platform, for example, Trailblazer from the MIT, as well as Beaconing platform from the Beaconing project. Homeless Monopoly is a game that is developed with the inspiration from Monopoly, and the game is to raise awareness on homelessness. How can we address this particular issue, and how can we actually work with the homeless people themselves in the creation of the game? And it is currently being used by the charity as well as schools around Coventry, and last year it won an award for the best game in progress in terms of new games that is coming up. And also we look at existing entertainment game type of setup, for example, educational escape rooms. And we have tested this out at university and are currently piloting, and we have actually piloted the virtual version of it, where the findings will be released soon. We are still in analysis and whatnot. And it's interesting that the lecturer who was involved said that in the 5 years that he's been teaching, he has never seen learners so engaged on an online Teams meeting platform. For example, Zoom is like, how can we make it more active and experiential? And in terms of the work in Malaysia, teachers have created their own games. They share it in the community. They've created card games to help people to understand how to create games. They have also created a blueprint, for example, here, the guideline that would help other teachers to create games. So meaning that teachers are taking ownership of the process, which is fantastic. And also, one of the most important thing as well is space. Space is important to encourage creativity. Can it be physical space? It can be online spaces. How can we make it experiential and active to encourage people to be more creative, creating playful solutions and games that can help people to develop their skills and competencies. So it is interesting. It is a shame that we haven't got a lot of time to actually talk through some of these different examples, but one of the things that I would like to emphasize is the things that we are doing in Games for Learning is all about the impact and the change that we want to achieve. We can start small and then we can build on top of it, and then we can actually work with teachers on the ground that can achieve the impact. For example, here in Game Changers, we have done experimental groundwork and try to understand different processes. And in creative culture in Malaysia, we implement it with people from remote parts of Malaysia. If they can do it, anyone can do it. They haven't got a lot of resources, but through frugal methodology, they are able to create their own games to teach in the classroom. And this has informed further support from funders for us to train teachers, around 400 teachers in Malaysia through Creative Culture 4.0. And we are also addressing the issues of social resilience in terms of the SDGs for United Nations under the project ACES, where we are expanding the impact in Southeast Asia. So we are also working with Malaysia, of course, Indonesia and Vietnam. So you can see the impact of game-based learning in so many different ways if we can think about working with those who are on the ground, which is important. And just to quickly end anyway, in terms of the work that we are doing, you can see some of the stuff that we have done. You can also use the open course material that we have on the website. We are revamping the website, but you can still access some of the different tools, the different case studies, and some of the course that you can actually join in on your own. Reusing, you are encouraged to reuse the stuff that we have on the website. And also have a look at the EU School Education Gateway, where some of our stuff are being used as part of the development resources for the teachers. So yeah, so it's interesting to see how game-based learning can actually impact a lot of people in different parts of the world. And yeah, so hopefully that you have learned something new today from the speech. And if you want to know more about it, it's like this is a shameless plug. a book has just been released in May, so that this book covers a lot of different methods, tools, as well as examples of the work that we have done so far for within the past 10 years. So yes, thank you very much. It's short and sweet, and hopefully I'm in time. Thank you very much. Karina, I think
I cannot hear you.
I think Karina is muted.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks. Sorry. I was talking, saying that was really amazing talk and work, because the tools that you and projects that you was showing to us are really brilliant. And I don't know if in the room everybody has or anybody has a question for Sylvester. Maybe Sylvester can read the chat and ask directly to you.
yeah. If you have any question, instead of just passing the turn, maybe you can write it in the chat, and then Sylvester directly reads, references the question, and answers. So anybody?
I have one question regarding the culture and regarding the teachers, because, well, when in my experience, when I involved teachers into the game design, maybe sometimes they prefer to put, to put more emphasis in the focus in the learning goals and not in the, the playful or gameful or experience.
Yeah.
What you can change this mindset, because I think that it's a mindset.
Yes, I think that is one of the things that is very important, to ensure that when we work with them, we recognize the importance of the curriculum and how they can implement it properly into their own subject and whatever, which is important. So in the beginning, we will always mention this is the goal in terms of helping them to understand how they can map the value of game-based learning into the curriculum. But before we do that, we get them to do different activities that will help them understand the reason why. Normally, the first thing they would do is we would ask them to play games. So we would collect different types of games, traditional games as well as modern games. So they would be playing with it in groups. They'll be enjoying it for about 1 hour or 2 hours. And you would talk about what are the emotional experience that you have with these games. You would say, oh, I remember this when I was a child. I love it. It's like when you play games, you don't even realize that time passed you by. And I say, can we not replicate this in the classroom? And say, how can we do it? Okay, right. The next stage is, let's do the flash game. You have the game that you have played with. How do you think you can change this and turn this into a game to teach your subject? What is your subject? They say, oh, I'm teaching math, and they have a lot of issues in terms of in operations and whatnot. I say, can you repurpose this and teach math? Think about it and say, oh, I can actually do this and do this and do this. And say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I can actually think of a game idea. And we will say that this is not going to be perfect. It is a process where you go to the iteration. So once we have gone through that process, we would ask them to spend about at least 1 hour in their teams to create the game and prototype it. Once they prototype it, they have tested it, they will invite their learners from the classroom to play it, and they would see how they react and whatnot. And some of them are so impressed with the fact that students who are not normally engaged in the classroom, suddenly the ones who are so engaged, so they realize that it's not because they are lazy or because they don't have the right level of intelligence in the classroom, it's because they are bored with the methods. So seeing them engaging in the game that they created, they felt empowered. So that is basically the process that we always go through. And then you go through it again over and over and support them in terms of mapping it against the curriculum. What is the learning objectives they want to achieve? What are the actual content or the units? How can we replicate that in the game? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that Terence,
Have some comments?
yes. It's not a question, but I come from South Africa, and I know the whole continent could use the frugal methods on implementing gamified learning. And Luis,
Fantastic.
say amazing work, really inspiring. One point that I've been thinking about is how to assess the impact benefit from your approach.
Yeah.
One point. Oh,
yeah.
I think that it's coming to answer my question. But I think that Luis make a point in his comment. How do you assess the impact?
The impact, there are two ways of looking at it. One is what the teachers want to achieve in terms of whether it's learning outcomes, whether it's the change of behaviors and so on. So that is the types of measures that we will go for, working with the teachers in terms of self-reflection, group reflection. But the overall thing that we are looking at is the theory of change. The theory of change, what types of change that can iteratively happen through the process. So it's more long-term. And you can also do it short-term in terms of using methods like RCTs and all sorts of different mixed methods that you can actually use to track change that is going to happen. It's not just the learning outcomes, but the actual learning behavior in the classroom, which the teachers are very interested in. And we are still in the process of evaluating that for both creative culture as well as ACES, because ACES is all about working with the teacher, the learners, and the community. So how can we track change properly? So we are currently working on playful approach in measuring and collecting data, because we don't want the community and learners to fill in surveys. That is defeating the purpose of playfulness, right? So we are trying to find ways for that. Yeah.
Well,
I think someone asked about
Christina, say another question.
Yeah, that is the game that we created in 2012, which was very much around the relationships and sex education in the UK, which is quite a sensitive area in terms of the teachers. They don't actually have to teach it. Most of the time, they will only show a video, let them watch it, and that's it, or talk about something, and the learners are not engaged with it. So we work with psychologists, we work with the teachers themselves, the subject experts, we work with the learners, try to understand the different types of areas that we wish to address. And one thing that came up from the research was, it's not about the use of contraceptions and so on and so forth. It's all about the emotional pressure that young people will experience, because sometimes a pressure to have sex in the young relationship that they had. So we created games that were involve an ecosystem, not just the instrument. The instrument is just an enabler. So the instrument is used within a classroom setting to encourage communal discourse, meaning that it will encourage group discussions and openness within the four walls of the classroom. So the important part of that particular game was the ability for teachers to pose it, and they have a discussion with the learners within the classroom. And the teachers were surprised to hear stories from young learners about their experience of being coerced or being pressured to have sex. And it is something that is powerful, because you need to include self-reflection, group reflection as part of the program for game-based learning, because that is where the learning happens. Because not only you learn from your own reflection, you learn from the group reflection. But yeah, so the RSA work has informed the transdisciplinary methodology that we propose in terms of how do you create a game to address this. So I call it game-based intervention, because we are intervening with young learners, because they are quite a sensitive population to work with, to ensure that we look after them properly.
Okay, Thank you. Terence asked, when would consider a curriculum over Gamified?
What does that mean? What would consider a curriculum over Gamified? It's
over Gamified.
Yeah, probably it's like one thing that we work with teachers is to understand that not everything should be gamified. You should not just gamify every single thing. It is an ecosystem, so meaning you will be able to find the gaps and the issues that you have in the teaching, identify which part that is less engaging, which part that is requiring more hands-on, which part is requiring more knowledge, sort of practice and whatnot. So that will identify the different types of gamified or playful approach that you can include. So meaning that it is informed by the actual gaps rather than using gamification just for the sake of it. Because I will always say that there are so many different approaches out there. We need to do it in a pragmatic and bottom-up way. So understanding the challenges first before we identify the gamified approach and the technology that we want to use, whether it's physical or digital.
Yes. You mentioned that in your talk that learning spaces are important, but what can I do, or what we can do in this new hybrid space with this new pandemic situation?
Exactly.
You have experience in hybrid spaces.
That is the same question that the university here is asking as well, and the teachers that we're working with, in terms of now that we have, just because we are forced to use digital platforms for everything we do because of the social distancing, so on and so forth. So how can we make it more interesting? And I said that let's think of the digital platform as an instrument. What is the experience that you want to create? What is the experience that you want to replicate or enhance? For example, when we work with our colleagues at one of the faculty, sports and exercise science, so they have a module which is called research and study skills for coaches. So they find it difficult to actually do it online because sports science is supposed to be active and physical, right? So we say, let's look at the platform they use, and they said that we are using Microsoft Teams, and we use OneDrive to store objects and documents and stuff. Okay, let's see how can we make it experiential, how can we make it active. So we decided to create a virtual escape room. So the virtual escape room contextually is very active in terms of the way that the activities are going to be done within that. But it is restricted by Microsoft Office. So we said that let's take this as a challenge. Can we turn it into something active? And we managed to do it. And we run 4 sessions with the students. And as I mentioned previously in one of the slides, and I said that the lecturers were saying that in the 5 years they have taught this subject, they are more engaged on this platform than when they are not on the platform, when they used to teach it sort of physically. So that shows that it can happen. It's all about the experience that you want to create, what activity, and contextual immersiveness, if you know what I mean. Normally we are engaged in a physical sense, but if the context is right, someone can actually immerse in the experience, and in the process they are able to enhance their digital skills as well, which is interesting. So yeah, so any space can be turned into a creative space if we think about the experience that we want to create. It's not easy, of course. It takes a lot of iterations. The first version we did was too ambitious, and it was not engaging because it was too complicated. So keep it simple, yeah.
Yeah, keep it simple. Okay. Alicia is saying that there are some comments and questions on YouTube. The most important thing when using the game is a rich environment of sensory experiences with the use of materials and the stimulation of the body through movement. And a question from Rosa Hill. What do you would say to people that think gamification can be childish?
The interesting thing is, someone said that to us before. We ran a workshop for managers, right? So they're all wearing suits and ties. And when we talk about, okay, let's do something playful, I said, why are we doing this? This is not serious and whatnot. And of course, they say it's childish. So we get them to experience the process of creating new experiences for their employees, to engage them in Lego, to engage them in playing games. Suddenly you can see at the end of the workshop, the tie will loosen up, the jacket was taken off, and they were having fun. And they said, this is interesting. This opened our eyes in terms of, you know, how games and playfulness can have an impact on someone's morale and someone's ability to work in teams and someone's ability to understand each other better. And I think it's quite difficult to preach to them. My advice is to show them, to get them to experience it before they make their judgment. And in terms of the types of games that you will create, it depends on the target groups. So of course, if you create a game, for example, if you want to create a digital game-based learning that is targeting someone of a certain age, say from 10 to about 12 years old, of course, it will not be as engaging to someone who is 15 to 18 years old. They might find it too childish. So those are the things that they'll make it interesting and to raise the importance of working with the stakeholders to create the gamified experience. So that's why when the teachers created those games, after they have done a few prototypes, they would work with the kids, get them to play with it, and the kids would tell them, oh, this part is not fun, this part is fun. So they will be able to change it and then improve it, and including the learners in the design process really helps. And using game design as a learning process has also been done. So learners can create games as part of the learning as well.
Oh, yes, okay. I agree totally. Alma has a question, but I don't know what is. Alma, please write your question on the chat. And Alicia has another comment from YouTube, Li Yang. As I know, in China, a lot of education centers use Lego for preschool children, which is so popular in recent years. Yes, and you are an expert in Lego methodology.
It is also useful for adult training as well. It's like when I went on the course for Lego, at first I was quite skeptical. I said, I know that you're using toys and it's quite interesting, but how can we use it in a corporate or in an adult situation and whatnot? So I went for the training for 4 days. It changed my life. It really brings out the best in you. And it really helped people to understand that when you, like what we are doing, and when we talk, we always use our hands, right? So thinking with your hands, when you touch something, it really inspires you. And you don't have to use Lego. There's so many different other things you can use. You can use Play-Doh. You can use random objects. In the different schools we are working with in remote parts of Malaysia, because they don't have access to toys, Legos, and so forth. Even though we give them some, but it's not enough. We encourage them to use regular stuff, bottles, plastics, twigs, branches, leaves, and use those materials to get the learners to be creative and thinking about stuff. So I think thinking with your hands is one of the key things that we need to think about in terms of tactile learning and whatnot, which is important.
Yes, and in early ages, I think that is the most important thing, playing with your hands and Lego. And the last question, because we don't have more time, because we would like to share with you more, but it's the last. Is the sexual consent game still available? Because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, unfortunately, because it was released in 2012. It was commissioned to be used in the schools for the different schools in the Midlands. So it is not currently available to public. It's not released as such because it was being used by the schools. They're not using it anymore because it's quite outdated now. It was created so many years ago. But if you can drop me an email at s.arnab@coventry.co.uk, I will try to dig it up, and then hopefully I will be able to provide the link so that you can give it a try. It's been a long time ago.
Okay. Well, Sylvester, thanks for accept our invitation. It was a pleasure for us to listen to you. And well, we have now a game, and Joan, the co-chair of this session, is in charge right now. Please, Joan, when you want.
Okay. Well, I have to say first that thanks a lot, Sylvester. It was very interesting. I really loved the small flash when I saw Homeless Monopoly. And well, I agree that sometimes you don't have to start from scratch, that you can find inspirations in games that already exist. You don't have to be 100% original. No? It's important to get inspiration from existing games which are successful. So well, as Karina said, well, this edition is a bit special because we have to go online. We cannot be in person, no? We can just be here in virtual space. But we thought that it could be interesting to have some small experience that could be shared, no, between all of us. And since it's a GamiLearn conference, I said, well, let's have a small game about games. No, let's have a quiz about games. Let's try to see how much you know about games. But well, even though it's framed a little bit like a competition, that's not really the goal. No, the goal is that we have a fun time and we can even learn some things. No, maybe we can remember things we thought we have forgotten about games. And when I say games, it's all kind of games. And well, maybe we learn some new things. So now let me share the screen. If something does not work, you tell me. So here it is. So in order to start, you can go to the webpage joinmyquiz.com, and the code for the quiz is 037237. And everyone is invited. I mean that everyone can participate, people here in the Zoom room or people watching the stream in YouTube. I mean, that's the nice thing, that doing this, everyone can participate. So we can wait a few minutes until everyone registers. No? You can use your phone or your computer, whatever you like. And then we can start. No? And we'll wait now. Okay, 3 people, 4 people. No, Alicia, Sylvester, you can also participate. I mean, it's not just for paper presenters.
Yes, I sharing the link in the YouTube chat.
Yeah,
I will
and
join right now.
And, I mean, anyone who happens to know the link, the code and the link can participate. It's open to everybody. But I'll wait 1 minute. I mean, no need to be in a hurry. Then, well, I can introduce that there are 30 questions, and each question you have 20 seconds to answer. So maybe it will be a bit stressful, but just think about this. No, it's just to have fun. So there are some interesting facts, and there are some things that maybe we have forgotten from. It's not video games; it's any kind of game. So you have to take that into account, and then, well, maybe you will learn new things today. And well, even though there will be a leaderboard and a winner, the idea is that we all share this experience, no? And when we can be together, no? And have a bit of fun, no? Okay, well, 14 people. So I will wait just a little bit more since we are in a tight schedule, and then we start. Another one, Dorian Dracula is here. I still wait. I give 30 seconds because people are still entering the game. Okay. Seems a little bit stable now. Okay, so well, let's start. Let's see. The first question. 3, 2, 1, go. So in Parcheesi, how many moves do you get when you capture another player's piece? Okay, time's up. Some people did not respond. Okay, it's 20. 20 moves. Next question. So at its very beginning, much before it started developing video games, Nintendo sold what exactly? Almost everybody. But if you don't know the answer, just click something at random. So, well, there's just movement at 4 and 3 position. They sold cards, Hanafuda cards. So how many points is the outer bullseye ring in darts? The outer bullseye. The small circle, not exactly in the center. As you can see, it's any kind of game. It's not video games. So there's some movement in the third position. It's 25 points. Next question. 3, 2, 1, go. What iconic female video game character was born in 1982 from a mod of an original Atari game? But well, I think that she's one of the first female video game characters, if not the first. Ah, there's more movement at the top. No, but number 1 is still there. Indeed, she was Miss Pac-Man. No, it's very a long time ago in 82. So let's assume Monopoly board is positioned in front of you. So the jail is in the northeast corner. What's in the southwest corner? We were talking about, well, homeless Monopoly just a few moments ago. This is normal Monopoly. Even though when you lose, it's also homeless Monopoly, strictly speaking. So more movement, but number 1 is still there. So it could be the go to jail position. Next question. In the currently trending video game Among Us, players must collaborate and vote to discover them. This is the trend now. I mean, everyone is talking about the children. Some of them even forgot about Fortnite and are just talking about Among Us. Go figure. So it's the imposter. They find the imposter. According to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition rules, Fireball is a 3rd level what spell? Which class? Okay, it's a wizard spell. The wizards are the one who casts spells. Roberta Williams is the main designer of the video game. That's one of the first female video game designers and developers. So one who made history. So all options, correct. She designed all these games, but maybe she's mostly well known for King's Quest. Next question. In chess, an old game, the movement called castling is the only one that allows you to move 2 pieces at once. No? The rook and the, maybe the term is a bit obscure, but just think about the only movement where you move 2 pieces at the same time, and one is the rook. Okay, I see a lot of movement, but number 1 is just nailing everything. Let's see. So complete the missing name in this series. Master System, Mega Drive or Genesis, Sega or Mega CD, whatever, and Dreamcast. All the Sega consoles until they decided they would not create more hardware. Okay, no movement now at the top. So a lot of people knew it's the Sega Saturn. So in basketball's NBA rules, when in possession of the ball, how much time do you have to move beyond the center line from your own half of the court to the opponent's? Since the moment you start playing in your court, how much time do you have to go to the opponent's court? You cannot just linger. Again, movement, second position. Number 1 is still there. So it's 28 seconds, exactly. Here, it was a difficult one, even though it was sports. Who says I'm the strongest woman in the world in the video game Street Fighter 2? Who would be the one in the image in the question mark in this scene? Okay, see again some movement. And it's Chun-Li. No one said Kami. And in the card game Uno, what do you shout when you have only 1 card remaining in your hand? I think this one should be easy, but well, who knows? Well, I expected that the ranking would not move, really, because, well, except one person, everyone knows it's Uno, the name of the game. The damsel in distress that Mario, or initially Jumpman, must rescue Donkey Kong arcade is named Okay, this one is a bit difficult one. This one was for the experts. It's Pauline, which was there like a trick question. And well, and you can see that I am a bit old and some questions have a bias toward old games, but there are also other ones. What is the name of this Magic the Gathering card, which you can sell for up to $70,000, depending on the edition and whether it's mint condition or not. Linus Mau gets the second position. It's named Black Lotus. It was among dark Black Lotus. So the famous meme and quote, "All your base are belong to us," appear in the video game. This one is also for the ones who want to get the max points. It's a bit for experts. There are easy questions that are a bit more difficult. This goes maybe towards difficult. And that made someone, Gherkin Gangi, it's number 2. It's the game Zero Win. Okay, this is then now for a classic board game instead of an obscure video game, no? Which is the yellow color category in Trivial Pursuit 4. And you can get some hints from from the picture, maybe. Okay, it's history. Okay, what is the name of this surprisingly very successful, some time ago, but very short-lived video game? And it earned a lot of money in the Android Play Store, about $50,000 every day for an indie video game that the creator made in one day. Not bad. It's named Floppy Bird. So 3, 2, 1, go. The best hand is in poker is named. Now we go again with all games, not always video games. A little bit of movement in the 5th position. It's named the Royal Flush. Now you know. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Complete the Konami code. Well, this is 100% video game. This is again movement in the 3rd position. It's A, B, A. Okay, what is the size of a cruiser in squares in Battleship? We move from video games to classical games that we played as when we were children.
And please note the image.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention it, but this image is very interesting. We can comment later. Oh, only one person knew. It's three squares. Well, the interesting here in the image is that the son and the father are playing, and at the bottom you can see, because it's the first edition, in the first edition, the daughter and the mother are cleaning, washing the dishes while the men play. These were other times. In later editions, they just cut. They didn't even modify. They just cut this, one piece of the board instead of just putting woman in the cover. What is the best-selling video game of all time? It sold about 200 million units in absolute numbers, not by time, in a period of time. It's absolute numbers. So which of the following is not a clue board game mother weapon? It's again another classic board game. So it's the brick. The other are all right. So in this cool following video game genre, you will see this message a lot. You died. Again and again and again. And people enjoy it, nevertheless. So one move to the 7th position is the Soulsborne, but mainly Dark Souls. Name this board game. This is not, well, I would say classical, but not really old. But it's one of the modern, well-known games. Okay, it's Carcassonne. Again, who's the most famous British gun-toting archaeologist born in 1996 in video games? And created by Core Design. That's the reason for the picture. Okay, it's a well-known video game icon, Lara Croft. We are almost finished. This is modern game. What animal is usually associated with the battle royale game Fortnite? You have to ask something about Fortnite because now it's the it's the big deal. So if we don't know, maybe your children know. You can ask them. So it's the yam. You break yamas to get items in the game. And again, an oldie. Which kind of dice are used in the 4-player movement in the Game of Life board game? You can get a hint again from the picture if you look carefully. Okay, so, well, there are no dice. You use a roulette. If you take a look at the picture. Okay. And which of the following games did not inspire a movie? All options are movies and and are games, no? But which of these games did not inspire a movie? So it's Twister. There's a movie named Twister, but it's not based on the board game. It's about a tornado. And the last question. So, which game is pivotal to the plot of the movie against movies? War Games from 1983. It's a game that, in fact, there are several games that appear in the movie, but there's one that is the most important. That, at the ending, it's the game that decides the movie. So it's tic-tac-toe. They decide that it's impossible to win. So I'd rather not start World War III. Okay, so Celery Bernstein won. Is in the room. Is Celery in the room? Or maybe it's in the YouTube stream, but that player was always in the top. I am. Okay, congratulations, Leo. And okay, so well, I hope you enjoyed. Well, the idea was not to win, but or lose, but just to have some time and share the experience. And well, now, if you consider, no, we can move to the next keynote, no, which will be the industry one. So for this case, we invited to Rafael Pérez, who is an indie developer here in Barcelona, who will tell us a little bit about, okay, you have created a game, but how do you really move from trying to be a developer to actually selling the game? So he couldn't actually be here because he had some other thing to do at this very moment, but he recorded the keynote. So here it goes. I hope it's interesting for you. Thank you, Alicia.
Okay.
We will be a bit out of time, but if you consider Alicia, you could, or you are the ruler.
Hello everyone, my name is Rafael Pérez. I'm a game developer at Oxygen Game Studios, and thank you for coming to this talk at GamiLearn 20. My talk explain things about game dev and why you are not going to make this travel or this adventure alone. And you must have some company with you to have a good success. Well, first of all, I want to present myself. I'm a young programmer basic in the past since 1985. And in the 90s, I had the first contact in the hacker scene, and my curiosity for programming and game developing grows a lot. Then in 1999, I became a demo singer and participate in some parties around Europe and in Spain. Well, in present, I'm a programmer, sound designer, and a co-founder in Axel Game Studios. I'm a Nintendo developer. I make some games with Nintendo in Opsiapp, using his development kits for Nintendo Switch and for Nintendo Wii U. We talked this for a way. And I'm a professor at game developing in the Enviat Escola Pia Granollers and Nowak Online University. And I have a hobby. I'm a developer of MSX video games and all computer that I love a lot. Well, I come to talk to you about what we have done as a company in Oxygen Game Studio, which is not exactly a success. Not everything is beautiful as it seems, and I come to give you a little reality bath, okay? It's a term in Spanish. To begin, I will tell you about who we are at Oxygen Game Studios and what we have done and what our intention was. Well, we got together in 2013 and with a group of friends who were very clear that we wanted to make video games, but we didn't know which one or how or where to start. One knew how to program, another to draw, another to make music, which is a typical trio to make any video game. It all started in a simple way, in a burger, in a restaurant, joining and talking and to see ideas of how we could do something. We were clear that we want to make our own video games, but we don't know the rule of publishing other people's games over time. Even begin to able make parts of video game from other companies, we art or code music, well, it's another option. That is where we're thinking about the business model. After we started thinking about our first production, first we had no name. That's going to come much later. It all started with the brainstorming of all video game ideas that we all had. We spent the whole afternoon debating these ideas. About all the game ideas that we present, the one chosen was Chameleon. I want to tell you a little about the game idea. Canvas is a white chameleon that cannot be camouflaged by collecting butterflies. The player can make customs for the character. The game is a still game with platforms and levels to be overcome. As the character passes levels, he gains new powers to overcome the most difficult levels. We really like it, the idea. We all agree with this. Along the process of creation began characters, scenery, final monsters, level designs, songs. The whole process was reflected in a document that, as you know well, is called the GDD, Game Design Document, like this one. I think the GDDs are very important, not only in the initial phase of development, but throughout the entry process. Because at the beginning, it marks how we want things, but the GDD evolves as the project evolves itself. It is important that the GDD was organic. That can make changes. Not excessively, otherwise the project can get lost in what is intended to do. And there are ideas that initially may seem good to us, but when we put in practice, they require changes. You have to consider this when you start to develop some kind of game. Chameleons talk about 2 years of work, of development, if I remember correctly. It was true that the GDD was changed, evolving, and in the end of the project was too long to be the first project as a new studio like us. If we detect that our first idea may take us so long to develop, it's better to discard it and think of something more affordable. Since while it's produced, you must have an economic support, okay? If there is not, you have to seek financing, which is usually living with parents or similar. At the beginning, we wanted to release this game on PC, and it was the cheapest development option. What happened? Why this game is not in PC? Well, we start to think about to port this game to another consoles, for example, for Nintendo. But in that moment, with that time, we did not know how to get to Nintendo. And then in 2014, we decided that to make ourselves know and explain what we're doing to the world. And we went to Tokyo, to the Tokyo Game Show, one of the most important fairs in the video game sector, as you already know. We got a stand inside the fair individually. The pavilions are huge and the fair is immense. We were in a corner, as we can see in the photo, with a small stand showing the video game. We are on the left side of the photograph. Our intention was to see if we knew someone from the Asian market who was interested in the game and to be able to publish it. We thought our game was very suitable for this type of market in Japan. During those days, we meet a lot of people. We did not make any contract, but okay. We saw how different companies in the sector work at the contract level. Well, it's interesting. As an anecdote of the moment, and we think, what is the fact of meeting people from the world? Because we got to share dinner with Hideo Kojima. The dinner, which is like a reception that was organized and prepared with all the attending the fair. For example, things like this are the make you think, well, one more achievement light. Now I can die for that. No, okay, of course not. But it's important for us. It was very, very funny to meet Kojima. The fact that someone like Hideo Kojima has your company card in hand, it's very gratifying. For a few seconds, you have been in his head and he has thought of you. And who knows if in the future that name will come across him again and may lead you to something or someone influential in this environment. When we returned to Barcelona, we were very clear that we should release the game on a console or on another platform that was not PC. Our game had a control problem, a game input problem, a design problem, okay? We have thought that it was played with command with gamepad, but at the same time, you have to paint the skin of the chameleon. That with the gamepad is horrible. It's impossible. It's very uncomfortable. On PC, more or less, it can work by toggling controller or keyboard with the mouse, but the player doesn't like it all. For this reason, we think that the best way to play our game will be a platform like Nintendo 3DS or Nintendo Wii U, because this platform has a touch screen, ideal for biting the character and the movement control with the stick on the same controller. For that reason, we decided to try our luck. And we start to see if we had any contact with Nintendo, how it worked in Europe, how to contact them, etc. And we managed to send the person in charge of Nintendo Germany a demo on PC, and we know that he played it. And this fact made him tell us that we could access the Nintendo development kit. For your info, for access to these kits, the company has to give permission to be there. Nintendo is a company that had time to watch it well, who could publish on their console and who could not. We finally became Nintendo developers. Here, we ran into a problem. Well, this is the Nintendo portal website. And the problem was deciding for which platform to play the game, if Nintendo 3DS or Nintendo Wii U. Our answer came from measuring the amount of work that each person had to do with respect to what we have already done on PC. Making for 3DS involved to redoing all the artwork to the correct scale and seeing what the original designs were not tortured much with the pixel art because the resolution is very few that the resolution that we work on PC. And so we decided to go to Nintendo Wii U to take advantage of that was already being done on PC. In this in a year and a half that we have been in development, it was one of the first mistakes we done. The amount of Nintendo Wii U sales offered us a very small number of users compared to Nintendo 3DS. So the unit sales possibilities were very small. We finally acquired a Nintendo Wii U development kit, and it cost about 4,000 euros. I would like to show you a picture of the development kit, but by contract with the NDA, non-disclosure agreement, I can't do it. When you start working with any of these technologies, with Nintendo, Microsoft, or PlayStation, they make you sign an agreement that protects what you are using from production secrets. So it's not possible to show this picture. I can tell you about how creating for Nintendo Wii U. The programming was done in C++. Nintendo offers you some development SDK libraries to access the hardware of the console. There were also plugins for graphic engines like Unity to make the port. But our game was created in C++ using the SDL Simple Direct Media library. Well, another problem appeared at this point. Our code was intended in ECL and was purely in 2D. The Nintendo SDK did not offer 2D support. It was all based in 3D. And this forced us to redo part of the painting code and for our game to adapt our code to simulate a 2D environment using texture and polygons. Something very common today to be made like engines for Unity, for example, but we haven't this render done. This took more development time. Well, they were things that we were discovering along the way. There were more adaptation problems like some file formats, graphic formats. Conversion had to be made and some very, very important conversions. So we got to work on it in 6 months. We have the board ready. We start to pass stability tests, call it load check for Nintendo. And we submit the game and test a number of important things, generally security things. You also have to pass the PEGI, age rating, certification, and the others that exist depending on the market in which you want to publish. This lengthened the creation process by another 4 or 5 months, I remember. Nowadays, it's somewhat faster to get this kind of certifications. The team was already a bit tired of hearing about Chameleon, and we want to finish it at launch on the market as soon as possible. The game was released in July. Seeing the game on the Nintendo Store and having it available makes you feel great. It's like you have finished something you wanted to achieve, a dream, right? All finished. No, it's not finished yet. Now comes the worst part. Being there is very good, but others have to know that you are there. Promotion, marketing, let people talk about you. To have good qualifications in the media that talk about video games. I want to show you the trailer that we make for Chameleon to put on the Nintendo Store. Please take a look.
Rated everyone.
everything was as we expected. The game had very low marks on 5.5 or 5 in various media. Good grades for art, music, and graphics, but the game was not engaging. We had several problems. The most important was the design of the game. For us, it was cool, but the public didn't like it. It was a still game, but you could run. They killed you when one touch, and you had to repeat the stage. We had a lot of criticism about for this. We received a lot of punches, like a Batman episode in the 60s. Self-distribution was another problem. We go to the market without the support of a distributor, a publisher, without the support of experts in the market or in knowing how to sell a product. Commercially, to appear in magazines, to appear in advertising, in banners, in highlights, or getting YouTubers to talk about you was very difficult and constant work. We could not do all this. We were content creators. We produced the video game, but we don't know how to sell it. Chameleon not sell what was necessary for these reasons, and it was not economically profitable at all. It was 2 years dedicated to something that didn't generate the expected benefit for a team of 7 people. It was an absolute commercial failure. This generates significant frustration in the team. You have to know to accept defeat in the lessons that life gives you. Chameleon was the jewel of our life, and it had gone wrong. We had to accept it. Not all the team could with this emotional load, and someone left the company. We learned that we would not longer to do a project that lasted 2 years of production, and we said that we could never do any more like this. We had to think about what project we wanted to do. As a personal hobby, in my spare time, I produce games for MSX computers, which are a computer standard from the middle of the 80s. In those months, I was creating a game, first some diagrams in a notebook, and I showed it to my team, to see if they like it. Well, I am only a programmer. As a graphic artist or a musical composer, I'm painful. So I told them if they would like to help create graphics and music for the game in their spare time. They said yes. And in the end, this video game came out and we released it in cartridge format after a while. Its name was BitLogic. We were a team of 4 people, musician, graphic artists, scriptwriters, and me as a programmer. After seeing that the game was like it and people bought it, one of the team proposed to make a remake of the game in high quality, in graphics and new soundtrack. Notice that the market of physical games for MSX is very large, but it seems like an interesting testing ground to see if it likes it. And he liked it. It's better than Chameleon. So we accepted the idea of doing a remake. As the game was already created and we knew the amount of things to do, we believe that the game will not only take about 6 months of work, and most of that work will be to remake graphics and music, more animation, redraw characters, change the aesthetics in the characters and settings, from pixel art to something more modern, etc. We were very clear that this version did not have to be the game that we wanted, but the version that the public wants. This is very important. You have to put in your head with fire or something similar, because sometimes you think something is perfect in a video game, but when others try it, you realize the truth. And where did we see that key point? There, at the Barcelona Games World. Barcelona Games World was a fair Not very big, but very important in the area when we live. We went to the Barcelona Games World with a spot the Catalan Arts Collective of the Generalitat de Catalunya. We have a version of our game, the same version that we make for MSX in terms of difficulty and style. 5 life, impossible to save the game. You have to pass the game in one sitting, the 5 stages. There were checkpoints, some doors that when crossing them, the game marked as a checkpoint, but they were not visually marked on the game screen. You only knew it if you die at the door, and things like that in MSX worked well with the public. People in the fair liked this version, but when you told them that the game had no way to save the game, people stopped playing and said they wouldn't play it anymore. The public that came to the fair, or target audience, was used to another type of gameplays, not so hardcore and with more facilities to win and not repeat things that they have already overcome. It's a different style of play that one an audience from the 80s, let's say, it's used to. In the 80s, style was very arcade. One coin, one game, and how far you will go, you play. The games goes from a hard arcade to a kind of video adventure in which you can save a game by passing one of its levels. We also reduce the amount of damage that the main character takes on each hit, and that makes the game more easier. We also add that the character communicates with you to tell you what you could do in some specific situation or give you helpful hints to overcome a situation. We wanted to avoid putting in a game tutorial, making the game itself explanatory through level design and learning and playing. Another very important thing that we gained in the Barcelona Games World was the context. Having a stand there, begin representatives, you give a very important point to interact with other people in the video game creation environment. Begin able to do interviews with other companies, with publishers, publicize your product. This is vital. It's very important because the context that you do there, the exchange of business cards, everything is important. Then we tried to get the second thing that we didn't work in the first project, a publisher. Someone who believes in you, who likes your product so that he can sell it. It's important when you go to search for a publisher, believe yourself in your product. Be able to show it as something that can be used to earn money. Many times, begin alone or begin few in the team, it happens that however has to attend these interviews, meets, it is the one who produced the game, and we are not always prepared for it. It is something very hard to do, especially if you are not your strong in this kind of relation or tied to relation with other people. You have to do all the roles when you are a developer, and you have to learn how to do it. Within these meets, we managed to have one with Nintendo. Until now, we have not been able to meet face-to-face with anyone responsible for the Saka company. And we wanted to take the opportunity to introduce ourselves, to put on a face, and also get the way to the new platform just released then, that was Nintendo Switch. We had to convince them that the game should be on the Nintendo Switch. They asked us to make a video, a document, and send it to them to see if we are worth to be prepared for the Nintendo Switch family or game of games, okay? In the first attempt to communicate with them, they denied us access to be in Nintendo Switch. We had to insist a second time with a better explanation to get in. Once achieved, we began to carry out the port. This video was the key to begin able to convince them. Focus on a product rather than a video game. What is going to surround the video game? What does the video game have to add? What I'm doing to show the publisher so that he can trust me, see that is something different from the other video games. This is a good thing to taking care for publishers. Second, find the balance between what you want to do as a game and what the public wants. When you find the balance, this is perfect. You have a good product and a good video game. The third comment I want to say is context. You have to move, go to fairs. Although in the current context, it's more complicated, I know, but talk to people in the sector, people know people and maybe not interested in you, but maybe someone who knows that. Or maybe I talk about you with someone and that person contacts you. This can happen at the company, press, publisher, at any level in any areas. The human relationship is very important. Be very social. You have to be a good producer, but also good businessman and business people. And that's all. Well, thank you for your attention. With this, I conclude my talk. I remain at your disposal if you want to ask me something or talk about something, explain it. You have my email here and my social network on Twitter. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy this talk. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're out of time as is usual. We went beyond. Alicia will kill me, but well, yeah, she says yes with her head. So well, thanks for being here, no, online in the cyberspace, no, and I hope that well you enjoyed the keynote speakers, no, even though one was recorded, and you enjoyed the game. And remember that if you want to take a look at the presentation of the paper, they are publicly available. So, well, Karina, if you want to say something, we have to go.
Yes, thanks for the authors and participants of this session. And thanks a lot to the organizers of the TEEM conference and their support, because they are always behind us, supporting everything that we need. And I will only have to say that at the end of the conference, the awards and other things that we have in these sessions will be commented at the end of the conference. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks, Sylvester. Thanks, Rafael. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Can you open your cameras and we can take a picture of the session?
Hey, everybody. Let's not think about bandwidth. All the cameras, go.
This is the online way to have the group picture of the conference.
Some familiar faces are in the room. Hi, Malta. How are you, Sasha? How are you, Diana?
Terence,
Okay.
see you now.
Smile. And that's all. So thank you very much. And we go to the next section related to the doctoral consortium. So thank you very much for the public in YouTube and to all of you for being here today.
Okay.